talking The Tank. This is written, directed and produced by Scott Walker and is a New Zealand-based creature feature movie. The story focuses on a small family, 2 adults and a young girl. And the husband of this kind of family finds out he has inherited a kind of oceanside kind of cottage from his deceased mother. Now, his mother has never mentioned this kind of property before, and he's a bit kind of confused about why that is. So the family end up kind of going to this kind of this area, and it's a very beautiful area, and a coastal area and everything. It's a very kind of run-down kind of cottage, but quite sizable kind of land. And this land includes a large water tank, which is kind of a underground water tank we use for kind of, you know, getting spring water and stuff like this. However, this tranquil existence is soon defiled by a group of kind of salamander-like giant creatures that are living in the area, and particularly kind of have made their home within this kind of water tank. Now, what will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's talk about what we think about The Tank. And yes, it's not this kind of tank, it is a water tank. So, yeah, let's talk about what the good stuff is, okay? So I think the first thing, and probably the most notable thing with this movie, is the special effects in regards to the creatures. Now, they are mostly practical effects here, and they look a little bit like the creatures from the Stranger Things kind of series, especially kind of the season 1 series, with the kind of the open kind of moors and things like that. They're quite well designed and kind of look somewhat kind of amphibian, if you are familiar with creatures like salamanders and stuff like that. But they're quite well realised on the screen, and as I say, they for the most part, use kind of practical effects, and they work pretty well. And because they are amphibious, you know, we do see them kind of underwater, and they kind of look quite eerie when they're kind of like popping up out from under the kind of the surface of the water, just to kind of have a kind of sense around about what's going on above and things like that. So there's some pretty good shots in regards to these kind of creatures and the way they're filmed, and that goes for the whole movie. In fact, I'd say this movie is, you know, on the technical elements, pretty well put together in regards to its cinematography, its lighting, sound design. These creatures have these kind of guttural roars that we kind of hear kind of around this kind of this property that's surrounded by kind of dense woodlands, and we kind of we can't quite tell where these things are coming from. So I quite like things like the sound design, the set design, the production value was all to a pretty good standard. The acting was solid, if not kind of remarkable, but everyone here did a decent enough job, I think, with their kind of somewhat kind of generic kind of roles, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, no one did a bad job, certainly in regard to the acting. So credit to the cast for at least, you know, doing an okay job here. And the story isn't easy to follow. Very predictable movie, which we'll talk about. But it's obviously, you know, if you want a basic kind of creature feature, very much in the mould of what you've seen before, this one will kind of, satisfy you in regards to that. But therein lies the main problem with this movie. This movie is as predictable, as generic as you have ever seen. There is absolutely no surprises or kind of like elements that kind of make this scene fresh. It is such a kind of generic cookie cutter kind of monster movie. I mean, everything is here that you have seen, you know, cliches that you've seen in movies before, setups. I mean, the wife happens to be a kind of expert on kind of animals. The husband happens to be a bit of a handyman and kind of do all these kind of things. You know, it's the typical, oh, we've inherited a property that we didn't know about. And this is just the setup, you know, this is just the setup. There's lots of obvious kind of foreshadowing. Oh, look, we'll have a little bit of a discussion of talking about amphibians and salamanders, particularly at the beginning of the movie. Oh, look, we'll find a cupboard full of kind of like ammonia and other useful items that will come into play kind of later on. oh look, there seems to be something at the window, but the husband didn't see it, so he kind of puts it down to it being a raccoon and things like this. There is a lot of kind of like cliche elements here. And although I said the acting I think is fair, you know, the acting is pretty good. The characters really aren't particularly kind of fleshed out outside of very kind of, as I say, cookie cutter characters that you'd expect to find in any type of kind of B-grade kind of horror here. You know, there's a few kind of setups in regards to the kind of the origin of the creatures to a degree and what's happened to this guy's parents, but we never really get a definitive answer. Not that I think you necessarily need it, but some might find it a little bit unsatisfying, is that the creatures are left largely kind of unexplained. It's not something I had a problem with necessarily, but I do feel sometimes people might, you know, might have a little bit of a problem with that. The body count is quite low. Certain characters seem to be kind of protected by plot armor, whilst other kind of like lesser characters seem to kind of be killed off relatively easy. It's not a particularly kind of gory movie in any particular way. It never really becomes particularly kind of scary either. There are some atmospheric shots, and I think some of the kind of like the you know, the lighting does help create some kind of like atmosphere, but I don't think it ever really kind of goes a scary, really. I have to say as well that the movie does drag a little bit. It's not a particularly long movie, but I do feel it could have been maybe shaved off about maybe 10-15 minutes. There are certain sequences here that seem to go on just a tad, and there's certain sequences that seem to kind of repeat the same point. You know, we have very kind of similar sequences, especially where in regards to, oh, well, there's something strange in the house, let's go and have a look, things like this. So it ends up being not a bad movie, but so generic, so what you've seen before, never really kind of standing out from the crowd. I think elevated, you know, a little bit above average though in my opinion, by some decent kind of, you know, VFX in regards to the kind of the creatures. And I think, you know, a solidly made movie on a technical department, maybe just not particularly creatively. You know, the characters are, you know, they're okay, they're just kind of humdrum. The story's very, very generic, but it's all done into a good standard, which to me just pips it above average, although I was tempted to give it a 5 out of 10, which is my average score. I'll give it a slightly above average score of 6 out of 10, because I do feel it just elevated slightly on the technical elements here, not necessarily the creative elements. So have you seen The Tank? What did you think of it? Please do let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.